Have you ever walked into a hospital elevator in Asia, looked at the panel of buttons, and noticed that a number is completely missing? The elevator goes from floor 1, 2, 3 and skips straight to 5. For locals, this is perfectly normal. It's a cultural phenomenon known as tetraphobia, the extreme fear of the number 4. In languages like Korean and Mandarin, the pronunciation of the number 4 sounds almost identical to the word for death. Because of this, hospitals, hotels, and high-rise apartments will often skip the 4th floor entirely. As outsiders, we accept it as a quirky, harmless superstition. But what if, in one specific hospital, that superstition wasn't a tradition at all? What if it was a highly convenient, perfectly legal architectural cover-up? What if the 4th floor physically exists, suspended in the dark between the active wards, completely sealed off from the outside world behind layers of concrete? And more importantly, what if something is still living inside it? Tonight's story follows a brilliant young doctor who realized the math of his hospital simply didn't add up, and decided to break through a wall to find out why. What he found is considered one of the darkest medical secrets in modern history. Turn off the lights and let's dive into the dark. Dr. Kim Song-ho was not a man who believed in ghosts. He was a second-year neurology attending at Haesong Memorial, a massive, decaying concrete monolith of a hospital located on the rainy outskirts of the city. Built in the brutalist style of the 1970s, Haesong was a maze of flickering fluorescent lights, peeling linoleum, and the constant, sterile smell of bleach. Dr. Kim was a man of science. He believed in brain scans and cold, hard data. But in the late autumn of 2023, the data at Haesong Memorial stopped making sense. It started with the disappearances. The first was Mr. Lee, an 82-year-old patient suffering from late-stage dementia. One evening, nurses noted he was safely tucked into his bed in Ward 3B. 10 minutes later, he was gone. Security cameras showed the frail man shuffling into the East Wing stairwell. But the cameras on the ground floor never showed him exiting. The cameras on the roof never showed him going up. He simply stepped onto the stairwell landing and evaporated into thin air. The police chalked it up to an elderly man wandering off into the city through a blind spot. But 2 weeks later, it happened again. This time, it was a healthy 22-year-old nursing student named Ji-yoon. She was working the graveyard shift. At 20:15 a.m., she told her colleague she was going to the vending machine on the 3rd floor. She walked into that exact same East Wing stairwell. She never came back. Panic spread through the hospital like a virus. Rumors of a serial killer or a human trafficking ring ran rampant. The police brought in highly trained K9 units, but the dogs behaved bizarrely. They would march up to the 3rd floor landing, plant their paws, and aggressively whimper, refusing to climb higher. Dr. Kim was exhausted, working brutal 80-hour weeks. But Ji-yoon had been a close friend. He couldn't let it go. One night, fueled by grief and black coffee, Kim broke into the hospital's basement maintenance archive. He was looking for original architectural blueprints from 1972, hoping to find an old dumbwaiter or a forgotten maintenance tunnel a kidnapper might be using. What he found was a mathematical impossibility. Spreading the dusty, yellowing blueprints across a table, Kim traced the layout of the East Wing. When he looked at the vertical elevation charts, he froze. According to the schematics, the ceiling of the 3rd floor ended at an elevation of 36 feet, but the floor of the 5th floor didn't begin until 60 feet. Kim blinked, grabbed a calculator, and ran the numbers. A standard hospital floor is 12 feet high. If the 3rd floor ends at 36 feet, the next floor should begin right above it. There was a massive 24-foot gap of undocumented, empty space sandwiched between the 3rd and 5th floors. The missing 4th floor wasn't just a skipped button on the elevator panel. It was a massive, physical, concrete tomb right in the middle of the hospital. Looking closely at the blueprints, there were no doors, no elevator access, no stairs leading to it. The stairwell bypassed it entirely, encased in thick structural concrete. It was an airtight void. Kim realized something chilling when he walked up the stairs from the 3rd to the 5th floor in the east wing. The flight of stairs was unusually long, almost double the length of a normal flight, and halfway up, there was a massive, seamless wall of cinder blocks, painted the same institutional green as the rest of the hospital. Nobody ever questioned it. But behind that wall was the missing floor. Kim was entirely convinced someone was using it as a hiding place. He had to get inside. At 3:00 a.m. the following night, the hospital was deathly quiet. A thunderstorm battered the windows, providing the perfect acoustic cover. Kim stood on the landing between the 3rd and 5th floors, staring at the green wall. In his hands he held a heavy, 20-pound steel sledgehammer. If I'm wrong, he thought, I lose my medical license, I go to prison. But the image of Ji Yoon's empty desk flashed in his mind. He took a deep breath and swung. He swung again. Dust choked the air. After 10 grueling minutes, his hands bleeding through his gloves, he had busted a jagged hole large enough to crawl through. The moment the seal was broken, a violent rush of air hit Kim's face. It was freezing cold, dropping the temperature by 20 degrees. But the smell made his stomach turn. It smelled like ozone, rust, old formaldehyde, and rotting apples. The distinct odor of an abandoned medical ward. Clicking on his tactical flashlight, Kim squeezed through the hole and dropped inside. He was standing in a sprawling psychiatric ward, locked in time. Gray dust-coated rusted gurneys and IV stands. But the equipment wasn't from the 1970s. The bulky computer mainframes and intricate wire setups were highly specialized medical technology from the early 1990s. He walked down the dead, silent corridor. He passed rooms containing massive, reinforced sensory deprivation tanks filled with stagnant black water. Above each tank was a halo of heavy electromagnetic coils. This wasn't a standard hospital floor. This was a laboratory. At the end of the hall, he found double doors with frosted glass. The lettering read Dr. Yoon J. Park, Director of Metaphysical Psychiatry, Est, 1994, YP Act IV. The tapes of 1994 inside the chaotic office. Kim found a bulky cassette tape recorder and a leather-bound logbook. Splicing a portable battery bank to the player, Kim hit play and unraveled a secret Haesong memorial had buried alive. Dr. Yoon J. Park was a rogue psychiatrist running an off the books research program. He was attempting to cure profound, untreatable psychological trauma. Park believed trauma was deeply embedded in the soul, or the human consciousness. His terrifying theory: if he could use extreme electromagnetic frequencies while a patient was in sensory deprivation, he could temporarily sever the tether between the physical brain and the consciousness. He could separate the soul from the body. While the soul was detached, floating in an ethereal state, he would biologically reset the brain's chemistry, then guide the soul back. It sounded like madness, but the clinical data proved he had succeeded. Audio log, October 14, 1994. The trembling voice of Dr. Park echoed in the dead room. The separation process is flawless. We have successfully untethered 7 subjects. Their bodies are in a vegetative state. Their souls are freely existing in the ward. The tape cut to a new entry. Dr. Park sounded terrified. October 19th, a catastrophic miscalculation. The ether is incredibly cold. When we tried to initiate the re-tethering sequence today, they refused. They don't want to go back into their broken bodies, but they cannot survive as pure energy. They are degrading. They are starving. Kim's heart pounded in his ears. November 2nd. Park gasped, accompanied by the sound of heavy metal crashing. I'm having a heart attack. I'm locked in the office. They are outside the door. Without the machines, they are trapped in this state permanently. The hunger for life force has driven them mad. They are feeding on electricity, and they want me. If anyone finds this tape, seal the ward. Seal it forever. The tape ended in harsh white noise. The administration in 1994 hadn't called the police. Terrified of a massive scandal, they evacuated the floor, bricked up the stairwells, and erased the 4th floor from the blueprints. They left the entities to starve in the dark. But energy doesn't die. It waits. Suddenly, Kim could see his breath in the air. From the hallway, he heard a sound, not a footstep. It sounded like radio static mixed with the wet, rapid clicking of microscopic teeth. Kasash. Kim crept to the door and peered into the pitch-black hallway. Floating in the corridor were voids. Pitch-black distortions in the air, like heat waves rising off hot asphalt, absorbing the ambient light, and they were moving. Kim watched as the entities glided toward an open side room. He followed, shining his fading flashlight inside. Slumped against the tiled wall were Mr. Lee and Ji-yoon. Ji-yoon, Kim whispered, rushing in and shaking her shoulder. She was alive. Her chest rose and fell, but when he looked into her eyes, absolute nausea washed over him. Her eyes were wide open, but entirely vacant, like looking into the glass eyes of a mannequin. She was breathing, but she was entirely hollow. The entities hadn't killed the missing patients. The starving souls couldn't steal physical bodies, but they could siphon life force. They had lured the patients through the decaying walls to use them as human batteries, keeping them physically alive, just to agonizingly drink their vitality. Suddenly, the shadows in the room elongated like black tentacles. A high-pitched ringing pierced Kim's ears. A black distortion drifted directly in front of him. For a single second, the entity touched his arm. The feeling was crushing despair. It felt like every happy memory, every shred of hope was being violently ripped out through his chest. It wanted to consume his spark. It wanted to leave him an empty shell next to Ji-yoon. Running on pure, primal adrenaline, Kim shoved his tactical flashlight directly into the black distortion and triggered the blinding strobe function. The entity recoiled. Kim didn't look back. He sprinted out of the room, bolted down the freezing corridor, and dove headfirst through the jagged hole in the cinder blocks. He frantically grabbed heavy concrete chunks and metal trash cans. Barricading the breach, he sat against the wall, shaking violently. The stairwell was silent. Nothing followed him out. Dr. Kim survived. The next morning, he threatened the hospital administrators with the press and the police. They didn't call him crazy. Within 24 hours, Dr. Kim was placed on indefinite, fully paid leave. 2 days later, a private construction crew arrived in the middle of the night. They didn't launch a rescue mission. They poured 2 feet of solid, reinforced industrial concrete into the east wing stairwell, permanently sealing the breach. Kim received a highly lucrative transfer to a pristine, state-of-the-art hospital in Seoul. A quiet payoff to keep his mouth shut. Officially, the missing persons cases remain unsolved. But there is a terrifying reality Dr. Kim lives with every single day. When you break a seal that has held for 30 years, the airtight containment is ruined. Dr. Kim realized too late that the entities didn't chase him through the hole because they were afraid of his flashlight. They didn't chase him because they didn't need to. The door was finally open. They could leave whenever they wanted. Fast forward 3 months. Dr. Kim is working a late shift at his new hospital. He's standing in a brightly lit room, checking the vitals of a man recovering from minor surgery. "You're looking great." Dr. Kim smiles. "You'll be discharged tomorrow." The patient smiles back. "Thank you, doctor." But as the patient smiles, Kim freezes. For a fraction of a second, the man's eyes look entirely hollow, vacant, like glass. Kim's blood runs ice cold. He slowly looks up and stares into the dark reflection of the room's window. There, hovering perfectly in the air, Right behind Dr. Kim's own shoulder is a patch of black, distorted air, and from the corner of the bright, modern room, entirely unnoticeable unless you know what to listen for, comes the faint, unmistakable sound of radio static and the clicking of teeth. They are no longer trapped on the 4th floor. The hunger is out, and in any hospital, anywhere in the world, the person sitting next to you could be entirely empty inside. Thank you for joining us. The next time you find yourself in an elevator and notice a number missing, maybe don't ask about it. Some doors are better left permanently sealed. Stay out of the dark.